Hello, everyone. I just thought, given all of last week, it might be good to hop on and have a quick conversation about Roe v. Wade and the implications. Wow, Matt, can't speak on Sunday for our community. First and foremost, the right to abortion is healthcare, and we believe in universal access to healthcare. First and foremost, people should be able to get the care that they need when they need it for the times they need, and medical decisions should be between a person and the provider. Wow, shocking concept, especially as a community who has long had the fight over bodily autonomy and what it means to control our own bodies and be able to use our bodies in the way that we see fit. Roe has always been a shrine on the hill for that, but as well as just the right for a woman to make decisions around her body and what her body is doing, and not have the state have a particular interest in that, because there is no compelling reason for the state to take interest unless there is harm being done, and there's not harm being done in these cases. So start there. Roe v. Wade decided as an idea, very important. You can quibble over the nuances and the positions, and those are good and important conversations to be had. But the idea that people should have a say in what happens and what is done to their bodies, that is paramount. Now, from a legal perspective, Roe has another implication for us as LGBTQ folks. Roe enshrined and created a doctrine of what was known a penumbrancy of enunciated rights within the Constitution. So this means that we've all read the Bill of Rights. We know that you can amend and add on, but what Roe codifies 50 years ago is that there are other rights that are created and unsaid that are important to happen. And this begins an expansion of rights by overturning some very problematic precedences to expand rights and grant more rights to the individual. Still with me? Okay. So what does this mean practically for us? Probably the first case where we think is that Roe establishes a right to privacy by looking at laws around due process and hearkening a little to the 14th Amendment, which is around equal protection under law. We wish Roe was more on the 14th Amendment under equal protection, and that, I don't know, people should be equal under all forms of law. Yeah, great concept. Unfortunately, that is not how it was decided. However, what sprung forth from it was this idea that there is a sense of privacy and a place where the government cannot go in your lives, that the government has no compelling interest to get between you and certain parts of your life. Nowhere is this more true than in the case of the queer community and Lawrence v. Texas. So Lawrence v. Texas is what struck down and suppressed national sodomy laws. It basically said the government's compelling interest in the rights of two consenting adults stops at the bedroom door, meaning that laws on the books that were used to target our community could no longer be enforced because they violated the idea of privacy that was created under Roe. Furthermore, as you saw from the leaked draft, there are a couple other rights, things that privacy protected and that privacy created, and that places where we stop the state from having compelling interest into intervening. So we know that also in the Constitution, there's no actual mention of marriage. There's not little text in the ways that they would like it. And that the idea of equal protection, extensions, and the privacy of Roe says that we can gain access to marriage. We also see it in Griswold v. Connecticut with the right to access safer sex practices and birth control. We also know that from a number of studies, women who don't access birth control can have worse sexual health outcomes, which is a problem. But we can also see that these fundamental ideas of where the state does not have rights or does not have an interest in invading itself into your privacy are really important for a community that is often over-policed and criminalized. So allowing more ways for the state to insert itself into your life for no apparent good reason still can be a problem. And the only way around that is if we have, I don't know, rights. Wow, things like privacy. And overturning Roe in the way that they're overturning Roe would potentially open the door for all of these other things to come into question. Now, they will say, the other side will say, no, the leader writes in the decision that it's only about abortion because abortion rips the fabric of, things, blah, 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 blah. But you can bet that this is the fever dream. If these other things did not matter, did not count in the calculus, they would not have bothered to mention them. Oh, surprise. You don't just add things to opinions for funsies, especially a Supreme Court decision. Like these, we create legal standards for the entire country where lawyers will and judges will interpret these laws. So when you create a standard for the law, you want it to be clear, concise, and if you want it to be targeted, you make it targeted. By opening the door, you purposely open that door when you didn't have to because you think some of these other decisions were decided wrong and would take away rights. That's right. For the first time in probably the history of overturning precedent, we are seeking not to expand the rights of the individual, but to curtail the rights of the individual. And Roe will just be the first shot at this. You can better believe that using the opinion, if it stays the same, states will come after marginalized communities, protected folks, folks who are seen as less powerful, and strip them of their rights. We can already see what is happening with attacks on our community, especially our trans brothers and sisters. This gets much more dicey for them. All of these things become problematic when we live in a place where we can allow the state to have a compelling interest to invade people making decisions that should be private and should be between them and their provider. When you are a assigned mind consenting adult, you should be able to make decisions about your bodily autonomy. And even sometimes when you're not sound, depending on the circumstances. But all that being said, watch this space, pay close attention, because a number of our rights as queer folks in America are bound up in the essential holdings of Roe and the privacy that it protects, as well as the allusions it makes towards unenumerated rights, things that we have held close to us. Now, some of the decisions they might not be able to get to right away because they are more recent precedent. And so, there might not be the will initially to go after them so soon. But that doesn't mean backsliding can't happen. That doesn't mean erosion of rights isn't dangerously happening already in the present. And it means that we have to pay attention to the connectivity of what might not seem directly to be an issue for us is a huge issue for us. Also, for those with pregnancy potential, also a huge issue, especially if they end up going after, say, Griswold v. Connecticut and say that either Plan B, IUDs, or birth control are all suspect and on the option. So yeah, keep your eyes open, watch what happens, and know that it is important for us to understand that we are tied to these decisions in more ways than we can imagine. And the fate of Roe lasts the fate of what could happen at the state level and what states could decide to do when targeting individuals that they decide they don't like for whatever reasons. I'll just end by saying that Lawrence v. Texas suppressed and turned down laws, striking down sodomy laws around the country. However, about 12 states still have those laws in the books. And if Lawrence v. Texas goes away, those 12 states could find yourself prosecuted by a sodomy law again. So it is a very real threat that could very quickly happen. Luckily, there are midterms coming. We got to get out and we have to vote in places, and we have to vote like we've never voted before. We need to do our best to keep the House. We've got to keep the Senate. And I hate to say it, but we need more numbers, because we need people who will stand up for our rights. And if there are Republicans who are willing to do so, by all means, kudos to those Republicans, the two of them, who joined the Equality Act. There might have been more than two. I'll have to double check on the House side. Not on the Senate side yet. But people who stand up for our fundamental rights should be supported. And that should be an issue that we are willing to weigh on the ballot as we make decisions coming this fall and coming this actually spring right now when it comes to primary season. So hold political leaders accountable for the decisions and the rhetoric that they support, and watch what happens when we take our eyes off the court and some terrible rulings come down. Also flag, oh no, I know I said I was going to be done, but just kidding. Also scary on the court is there is a new question about religious freedom tests, and that will be an interesting space. There's also a case around gun control, and can states have a compelling interest to regulate gun control with concealed carry permits in New York. So that could also be problematic as a community who has strong victims of gun violence. So it's going to be a rough June, but we can get through it, and it does not have to be permanent. We can elect more leaders who can create laws that actually protect our community. We just have to breathe and get through it together. Thanks all. As always, email me if you have any questions, or the rest of the folks at the center. We are here to help and to be a resource.